Here are the top stories for today, February 16, 2021. Former Senator Bongbong Marcos has lost his electoral protest against Vice President Leni Robredo. NEDA Acting Chief Carl Kendrick Chua is pushing to place the country under the less restrictive MGCQ. President Rodrigo Duterte has a clear message for Vice President Leni Robredo and Senator Panfilo Lacson regarding the country's foreign policy. And the House Ways and Means Committee moves further to protect freelancers in the country. Good day, I'm William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. Former Senator Bongbong Marcos has lost his electoral protest against Vice President Leni Robredo. The Supreme Court made this announcement in an online briefing today.
Good afternoon, everyone. The Supreme Court, sitting as the Presidential Electoral Tribunal, unanimously dismissed the electoral protest filed by former Senator Bongbong Marcos Jr. against Vice President Leni Robredo. This is in connection with the Presidential Electoral Tribunal case entitled Ferdinand Bongbong R. Marcos Jr., Protestant versus Maria Leonor Leni Daang Matuid G. Robredo, Protestee, PET case number 005. Out of the 15 members of the tribunal who were present in today's meeting, I was informed that 7 members fully concurred in the dismissal, while 8 concurred in the result. The Supreme Court Public Information Office will upload in the SC website a copy of the resolutions of the tribunal detailing the reason for the dismissal once they are available. Thank you very much.
Court spokesperson Brian Keith Hosaka declined to provide other details of the court's decision, saying that the full resolution will be uploaded in a high court's website at a later time. Meanwhile, Malacanang said it respects the decision of the High Court. In a statement, Marcos' spokesperson Vic Rodriguez declined to comment on the decision. He said they will issue a statement once they receive a copy of the official decision from the High Court. Acting Socio-Economic Planning Secretary Carl Chua is pushing for the further reopening of the economy to mitigate or lessen the impact of COVID-19 pandemic to the economy. Chua, who is also the Acting Director General of the National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA, attributed the higher number of hungry people in Metro Manila to a more stringent quarantine status in the area. The latest Social Weather Station survey shows that almost 1/4 of residents in the National Capital Region are hungry, while the figure is much less outside NCR. Chua reiterated his recommendation to the President during their meeting last night in Davao City.
Kailangan po natin mag-shift sana sa lalong madaling panahon to MGCQ for the entire Philippines, sana starting March 1, 2021, para i-address po yung hunger or yung mataas na antas ng mga Pilipino po na nagugutom. At nakita po natin na nagbukas po tayo last October at yung dumaan po yung Christmas vacation, hindi po naman umakyat yung COVID cases. Recommendation po namin, number 1, we further open the economy to MGCQ for the entire Philippines, especially NCR, starting March 21. And the main reason is gusto na po natin ma-mitigate or mabawasan yung sickness, hunger, poverty, job, and income loss that are arising from non-COVID cases. At kung kailangan, gumamit po tayo ng localized lockdown sa barangay or municipal level to address the local spread of the virus. Expand po natin yung public transport from 50% towards 75% para mas marami po yung makabalik sa kanilang trabaho. Expand the age group allowed to go out. Of course, with safeguards din po. Ngayon po kasi 15 to 65 lang yung pwedeng lumabas. Ang proposal po namin, i-gradual natin yung pag-expand to age 5 to 70. At pwede natin gawing dahan-dahan in increments of 5 years, also with appropriate safeguard. Yung
President Rodrigo Duterte directed Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. and presidential spokesperson Harry Roque to brief the public twice a week on the government's COVID-19 vaccine drive. He said he needed both Galvez and Roque to continue to keep the public informed.
Alam mo, you can only have about a good knowledge or at least an understanding of our COVID program once you hear me, ngayon sa gabi nito. But it does not come to you every day. So I have requested Secretary Galvez and si Secretary Roque sila ang magdala sa public information, and it should be given twice a week para you'll be better informed of what government is doing. Yan siguro ang paraan dyan, but I leave it to Secretary the press secretary to do the arrangements.
Meanwhile, President Duterte also reiterated his call to government officials, including those at the Bureau of Customs, not to hamper the smooth flow of COVID-19 vaccines in the country. Secretary Carlito Galvez later clarified that the Bureau of Customs, or BOC, would only undertake the pre-clearance of the vaccines.
Actually, if I may say something about the customs, alam naman nila kung alam na, that's why we are there, because nandiyan na yung bakuna, and there's really no need to tarry a minute longer in releasing the cargos. Kasi alam naman nila bakuna yan, and it is very important that they should be stored immediately upon ma-deplane yung mga bakuna.
At saka ang kagandahan nga po yung sa clearance sa custom, pre-clearing na po ang ginawa po. Sumunod po sa utos niyo po na talagang wala pong time na makukonsumo doon sa custom clearing. So 0 minutes po sila. So tinignan lang nilang boxes, binilang po nila, and then naikarga po kagad sa refrigerated van. So maganda po lahat ang execution.
There are no threats that may hamper the transport of COVID-19 jabs, at least for now. The Philippine National Police, or PNP, made this assurance as the vaccines are expected to arrive this month. PNP Director for Operations Major General Alfred Corpus said they are keeping a close watch on the movement of both communist rebels and terror groups. This, as he claimed, reports in some countries where vehicles carrying COVID-19 vaccines were sabotaged by lawless groups. Meanwhile, the PNP in Western Visayas are deploying over 2,600 personnel to secure health workers who will be at the forefront of the vaccination drive. The police will also secure the transport of the vaccines and deploy support forces and quick response teams for any emergency situation. The PNP has earlier said it is willing to open its camps to serve as inoculation centers. Those who may experience adverse side effects following COVID-19 vaccination will be compensated. Under the proposed Emergency Vaccine Procurement Act of 2021, an indemnification fund will be created and will be administered for these patients. The proposal also authorizes local government units to skip public bidding when buying COVID-19 vaccines.
Yung obligasyon din natin ay dapat tayo rin po ang compensate sa mga magkakaroon ng side effects, at na naging suhestyon ng ating Secretary of Health ay ang PhilHealth ang magbabayad doon sa mga magkakaroon ng side effects.
Cities across the country continue to gear up for their own COVID-19 vaccination programs. Earlier today, officials from the Coordinated Operations to Defeat Pandemic or CODE team visited Davao City to assess its readiness for the measure. Health Secretary Francisco Duque III and other team members inspected the Southern Philippines Medical Center's facilities for the vaccination drive. This includes areas where vaccines will register, undergo counseling, screening, and a waiting area to monitor their condition after vaccination. During the dry run, Duque administered a mock vaccine to presidential spokesperson Harry Roque. The team also visited a Mabini Elementary School, one of the city's designated vaccination centers, where they were joined by Mayor Sara Duterte. Also today, Cagayan de Oro City held its vaccination dry run at the J.R. Borja General Hospital. The city plans to vaccinate a maximum of 100 persons daily in at least 16 vaccination sites. Mayor Oscar Moreno earlier said the city will set aside up to ₱500 million for COVID-19 vaccines, aside from getting vaccines coming from the national government. The Metro Manila Council has suggested easing the minimum age restrictions of those allowed outdoors in Metro Manila from 18 years of age to 15 years old. MMDA Chairman Ben-Hur Abalos Jr. said lowering the minimum age to 15 allows the government to first monitor whether the change would cause a rise in COVID-19 infections after a certain period. Abalos also announced the apprehension of the council over the reopening of cinemas in Metro Manila. Malacanang earlier announced the deferment in the reopening of cinemas in areas under GCQ as it has already been moved to March 1st. Metro Manila mayors have deferred the reopening of cinemas and other leisure establishments to more guests amid health and safety concerns. But is the public ready to patronize them again amid the COVID-19 pandemic? Let's find out in today's Boses ng Masa.
Hindi pa.
Bakit po?
Mas nadami ang mahawa. So, hindi po tayo matatapos na sa mga sakit na to kung hindi siya, wala pa tayong definite na magandang COVID vaccine.
Hindi, para sa akin lang, sir, pero hindi ako nanonood ng sine. Hindi naman talaga kami nanonood ng sine. Pero sa akin lang, pwede naman na siguro. Kasi sa ibang bansa nga, di ba, wala na yung COVID na yun. Meron na, naglalakad na nga sila ng naka-free, walang mask.
Para sa amin kung safety na ba lahat, okay lang. Pero kung meron pa rin mga ganitong pandemic, baka sakali huwag muna. Huwag muna.
Sa akin po, sir, hindi pa po papayag.
Bakit po?
Kasi marami na ngayong virus di ba?
Kahit po kasama yung mga pamilya or ano?
Opo, parang hirap po. Di ba may bago ngayong virus? Kaya ang hirap.
Still to come, President Rodrigo Duterte has a clear message for Vice President Leni Robredo and Senator Panfilo Lacson regarding the country's foreign policy. And the House Ways and Means Committee approved a measure providing protection to freelancers in the country. More on these when the PNA Newsroom continues.
Sa matinding laban natin sa Coronavirus Disease 2019, sugpuin din natin ang pagkalat ng fake news. Huwag magbahagi ng impormasyon na hindi tiyak ang pinagmulan. I-check mabuti ang source ng balita. Kumuha lamang ng impormasyon mula sa mga official channel ng Department of Health. Huwag magpadala sa maling balita, basta't sama-sama at laging handa. Kaya natin to. Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito. Pangalagaan ng sarili laban sa Coronavirus Disease 2019. Hanggat maaari, umiwas sa mataong lugar. Iwasang hawakan ang ilong at bibig, maging malinis sa katawan at ugaliin ang wastong paghuhugas ng kamay. Takpan ang ilong at bibig kung uubo o babahing. Umiwas sa mga taong nagpapakita ng sintomas ng coronavirus disease gaya ng lagnat, ubo at sipon. Magsuot ng face mask kung kinakailangan. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa. Kaya natin to. Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. As the fate of visiting forces agreement between the Philippines and the United States hangs, President Rodrigo Duterte has strong words for two top officials of the country. This came as Vice President Leni Robredo and Senator Panfilo Lacson described as extortion his demand for the U.S. to pay if it wants the pact to continue. Benj Mondoc reports.
President Rodrigo Duterte has a clear message for Vice President Leni Robredo and Senator Panfilo Lacson. It is only him who can decide on the country's foreign policy. The chief executive's strong words came as Robredo and Lacson likened to extortion his remarks for the United States to pay if they want the Visiting Forces Agreement or VFA to continue. While being a bit lenient with Lacson, who is not a lawyer, the president said Robredo, who is a lawyer, should know better.
The Constitution of the Philippines provides that the foreign relations or foreign policy is vested in the President alone. Siya yung kaisa-isang, well, I happen to be there, kaisa-isang ano ang policy gusto niyang ipalabas for the Philippines is vested in the President and not with the senators or the vice president.
This comes as Duterte cited reports from the armed forces of the Philippines that Washington, D.C. is slowly rebuilding its former military hubs in the country, an issue which he cannot take lightly.
Anong binigay ng Amerikano? Gawain lang tayong outpost, tapos mag-pro-American ka. Pagputok, ang unang siguro, tanungin kita, kung magsagot ngayon, ang unang matamaan kung magkagera ang Amerikano pati Philippines. Alam mo? Kung hindi mo alam, sabihin ko sa iyo, and the Philippines invariably would be drawn into the vortex of a conflict that is called war.
Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque earlier said the Philippines is getting a meager amount of security assistance from the U.S. compared to other countries such as Pakistan. Citing a report from Washington-based think tank Stimson Center, Roque said the Philippines only got a total of $3.9 billion for counter-terrorism efforts from 2002 to 2017, while Pakistan got $16.4 billion. In February last year, the president terminated the VFA, but this was halted twice already, in June and in November. The pact allows the free entry of U.S. troops to the country as well as their participation in joint military exercises. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Benj Bondok.
The House Ways and Means Committee of the House of Representatives approved a measure providing protection to freelancers in the country. The bill provides tax amnesty provisions for freelancers that would clear them of any pending tax liabilities. The amnesty covers income taxes under Section 24 of the Tax Code for freelancers earning less than 1 million pesos a year. The applicable rate will be 2% of the gross receipts above the first 250,000 pesos. The bill would also advance the rights and welfare of freelancers, ensuring them entitlement to humane working conditions and a proper living wage. Among the protections included in the bill are framework for contracts between employers and freelancers, eligibility for night shift differential, and hazard pay for freelancers deployed in dangerous areas. The proposal also makes it unlawful to pay the compensation due the freelancer later than 15 days after the date of payment of compensation stated in the written contract. Committee Chair Joey Salceda, who is also author of the bill, said This measure would help more than 2 million freelance workers in the country to start afresh with their tax liabilities so that they will be able to begin under new contracts with clean tax records. The national ID will be a valid proof of identity that shall be a means of simplifying public and private transactions, enrollment in schools, and the opening of bank accounts. Late Kabagani gives us an update on the ongoing registration in Dumaguete and Soxargen.
In Dumaguete City, the ongoing Step 2 registration of the Philippine Identification System or PhilSys has moved to a larger venue to accommodate more registrants. The activity was previously done at the Lorenzo Building along the National Highway in Barangay Daro is now being held at the second level of the Robinson's Place shopping mall in Barangay Kalindagan. The Philippine Statistics Authority in Negros Oriental targets to accommodate 160 registrants per day. Meanwhile, the Philippine Statistics Office in Soxargen is expecting a higher turnout as more people are coming in to voluntarily register. PSA Region 12 Director Makatar Manulon said house-to-house registration of the priority families is ongoing. He also assured that their personnel are complying with the necessary health protocols in the wake of the continuing threat of the COVID-19 pandemic. The government aims to establish a single national ID for all Filipinos and resident aliens to boost efficiency, especially in dealing with the government services. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Late Kabagani.
Northern Samar is implementing an initiative by UNICEF to address issues and challenges of poor children with disabilities. The provincial government and Plan Philippines signed on Monday a partnership deal in the implementation of prevention, early identification, referral, and interventions for delays, disorders, and disabilities in early childhood. The project seeks to refine the system of providing services to help children with developmental delays, disorders, and disabilities. The program, that will run until February 2022, covers the towns of Catarman, Lope de Vega, Mapanas, and Mondragon as pilot areas. For its part, Plan Philippines will provide training, skills, and information for the village health workers and daycare workers. Provincial Health Officer Nympha Cam, meanwhile, underscored the need to come up with a baseline survey to identify the prevalent disabilities in the province. The Department of Science and Technology, or DOST, plans to aid the soybean and cacao sectors in the provinces of Ifugao and Bukidnon. DOST Cordillera Administrative Region has chosen St. John Organic Farm Families Organization and Barangay Nayon in Lamut, Ifugao for the establishment of a cacao processing facility. For soybean processing, the beneficiaries will be Nalbu Women's Organization and Barangay Nalbu in Mayoyao Town, and Jaire Organization and Barangay Poblacion in Banawe. Aside from assistance on buying equipment, the DOST will also provide technology training as well as assistance on packaging and product labeling. Meanwhile, DOST Region 10 is financing the equipment and training of Malaybalay City Cacao Growers Association in Bukidnon. The assistance is expected to boost the beneficiaries' skills on tablea and chocolate making, good manufacturing practices, and food safety. In our business news, digital transactions in the country has grown in the past year, with GCash now being patronized by almost 1 of 3 Filipinos nationwide. Mint, the operator of GCash and a subsidiary of Globe Telecom, said its base of registered users has grown over 33 million at the end of 2020. CEO Martha Sazon said the company has emerged as a trailblazer in digital financial services amid the pandemic. She noted the increasing adoption of GCash even for fishermen selling their catch and accepting payment via GCash. Earlier, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Governor Benjamin Diokno committed to transforming the Philippines into a cash-light from a cash-heavy economy by converting 50% of total retail transactions to digital payment channels by 2023. The BSP also aims to convert the country into a coinless society by 2025 and to double the percentage of Filipino adults with bank accounts to 70% by 2023. Up next, the Philippine Army exhumed the remains of an 18-year-old NPA rebel. And China welcomes delegations for the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympic Games. The PNA Newsroom returns after these reminders.
Tandaan ang tamang paraan ng paghuhugas at paglilinis ng kamay upang makaiwas sa iba't ibang karamdaman. Basain ng tubig ang mga kamay at sabunin. Unang sabunin ang mga palad at ang likod ng mga kamay. Kuskusin na maigi ang pagitan ng mga daliri at maging ang mga kuko. Isunod ang pagitan ng mga hinlalaki at kuskusin ng paikot ang mga dulo ng mga daliri sa magkabilang palad. Banlawang mabuti ang mga kamay sa malinis na tubig at patuyuin ang mga kamay gamit ang single-use towel o air dryer. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito. Alamin ang mga dapat gawin sa lugar ng trabaho laban sa Coronavirus Disease 2019. Ang mga kumpanya ay dapat magbigay ng face mask sa kanilang mga empleyado. Bukod dito, magbigay kaalaman din patungkol sa COVID-19. Siguraduhin malinis ang kapaligiran. Maglagay ng sabon at hand sanitizer sa mga palikuran. Siguraduhin ligtas at nalutong maigi ang mga pagkain sa kantina. Obserbahan ang kalusugan ng mga empleyado at katrabaho. Kung sakali man na mayroon silang sintomas ng coronavirus disease, gaya ng lagnat, ubot sipon at hirap sa paghinga, ay agad ipasuri sa doktor. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
Authorities rescued 19 minors from an indigenous peoples community believed to have been held against their will in a retreat house in Cebu City. These 7 persons who were with the children at the University of San Carlos Talamban campus were teachers of the Salugpungan Tatanu Ig Canogon School in Mindanao. The children, who were from Talaingod town in Davao del Norte and parts of Sultan Kudarat, were reportedly held there since March last year. Police Regional Office 7 Chief Ronnie Montejo said they are likely victims of indoctrination and recruitment by communist terrorist groups and exploitation by the Salugpungan. Meanwhile, in a joint statement, Society of Divine Word Provincial Superior Father Rogelio Bagao and USC President Father Narciso Celian said the SVD community sheltered the delegation after the city was placed under strict community quarantine. Salugpungan schools are reportedly being used as breeding grounds for the radicalization of tribal children. The Army has exhumed the remains of an 18-year-old Communist New People's Army rebel killed 2 years ago by her own comrades. The Army's 103rd Brigade in Marawi City exhumed Hope Kapampangan's remains on Tuesday in Lanao del Sur. The Army says a former rebel informed the military about Kapampangan's death, adding that the victim was believed to have been tortured. Hope Kapampangan joined the NPA when she was 16 years of age in the year 2016. 2 years later, she was killed by her own comrades for suspicion that she was a government informer. Ricky Kapampangan, the victim's father, said he managed to speak with his daughter on the phone sometime in 2018, shortly before she was killed. In our foreign news, Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, announced Sunday they are expecting a second child. A spokesperson for the prince confirmed news of the Duchess's pregnancy, adding that their firstborn, Archie Mountbatten Windsor, is going to be a big brother. In a statement released Sunday evening, Buckingham Palace also expressed their well wishes. The latest member of the royal family will be the 5th grandchild of Charles, the Prince of Wales, and either the 10th or 11th great-grandchild of the Queen and her husband, Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. A great-grandchild is also due soon to the Queen's eldest granddaughter, Zara Tindall. In sports, China welcomes delegations from across the world to attend the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympic Games. State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi welcomed future participants on Sunday, saying the country will definitely make the Games worthwhile. Wang made the remarks at a meeting with around 30 ambassadors to China and senior diplomats at the Jiangjiakou competition zone in Hebei province. China has entered the one-year countdown to the opening of the Winter Olympics. Diplomats believe the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympic Games will become a milestone of humanity's victory over the pandemic. Taal volcano is acting up again as the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS, observed tremors and changes in its main crater lake on Monday. PHIVOLCS said 50-week tremor episodes were recorded from 5 a.m. to 3 p.m. This signals increased hydrothermal activity beneath Taal Volcano Island. The PHIVOLCS recorded 68 shallow tremor episodes in the volcano island since February 13. PHIVOLCS Director Renato Solidum also said the main crater lake is becoming more acidic and hotter. Local government units are advised to prepare in case of the volcano's renewed unrest and to assess previously evacuated barangays around Taal Lake for damages. Here's another look at today's biggest stories. Former Senator Bongbong Marcos has lost his electoral protest against Vice President Leni Robredo. NEDA Acting Chief Carl Kendrick Chua is pushing to place the country under the less restrictive MGCQ. President Rodrigo Duterte has a clear message for Vice President Leni Robredo and Senator Panfilo Lacson regarding the country's foreign policy. And the House Ways and Means Committee moves further to protect freelancers in the country. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, visit our webpage or head onto the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, we tell stories that inspire change. I am William Theo. Good day, everyone.